ladies and gentlemen. My name's Patrick, and I'm joined out here by Landon. And we're going to be firing for you today one of Michilimackinac 11 pieces of artillery, the Cohorn mortar. Now, it's a small little piece of equipment, but it packed a pretty good punch. But first, let me tell you about some of the artillery that they had here at Michilimackinac. There were 11 pieces. One of them you might have seen if you walked in along the lake shore this morning. That's our bronze 6-pound light field piece. They had 2 of those here. There were 2 heavy iron 6-pounders as well. And when I say 6-pounder, that means that it fired a solid iron shot weighing around 6 pounds. There were some amusettes. They were bronze barrel guns. They were a fairly long barrel, about the length of the gun you see on the lake shore, but at a real small caliber. So they fired about a ping pong sized ball out of those. But they were said to be, quote unquote, much blown in the vents and good for salute charges only. So those amusettes were old, and they must have been fairly wore out. The vent is the touch hole where you light the cannon, and apparently if that was worn out, the cannon couldn't muster the compression to cause any real damage in combat, so they were more or less noisemakers. There were 2 wall guns. The wall guns are a 98 caliber musket, but they are artillery because they fire an iron ball. They can also fire grape shot as well, or butt shot. And then this piece here, it is a Cohorn mortar. Cohorn mortar is a smaller version of the big mortars that they had all the way back to the 1600s. This particular Cohorn mortar, those are the first kind of infantry support artillery piece that can be moved around easily on a battlefield. The English used them against the Scottish to drive them off a big mountain pass, so they didn't have to send troops up the mountain in order to get through that pass. So that was one of the battles where the Cohorn mortar was used. Mortars are used famously in the siege of Gibraltar as well. But this little one here at Michilimackinac would have been a handy piece of equipment as well. But before I prattle on about it too much, I'm going to get Landon busy loading it with a very simple command of load. So he's going to go about loading the Cohorn mortar. Now, what you see him doing here today is a little different than how it would have actually been done. Why? Because we're not firing a bomb out of the Cohorn mortar. The mortar doesn't fire solid iron shot like the cannons. It fires a bomb. Yeah, I have one here. This is the bomb. It's a hollow ball packed with gunpowder with a wooden fuse. That wooden fuse can be cut and set so that the mortar will go off when the skilled artilleryman wants it to. So, fired at a permanent 45-degree angle, when it comes down, it could explode above the heads of the enemy, or perhaps it can be cut to where it explodes after it hits the ground. If they're trying to, say, blow up maybe a powder magazine in a fort or something to that effect. Now, what Landon's doing does not represent how you would actually load the mortar. We are firing a small salute charge that's wrapped in not so historically accurate Reynolds wrap. And normally you would just have to set the powder charge in the barrel of the mortar. The original charges were packed in flannel or linen bags, and then the ball sat on top of that. But if we want this to make a boom for you, and we just set the charge in there and we light it, it'll go poof, and it won't really make a boom because there's no compression. That's where the boom comes from, is the compression caused by the explosion. So that's why he's pounded it in there real good. But what originally they just set in the powder charge, and then on top of that sets the bomb. Now, a bomb would be, that fuse would be cut and set by a soldier known as a bombardier. So that's where that title comes from, bombardier. And they would be members of the Royal Regiment of Artillery. There were 11 pieces of artillery here at Michilimackinac, so technically there should have been a lot of artillerymen, but there was only 1, sometimes 2 members of the Royal Regiment of Artillery here. So they trained the infantry soldiers like myself and Landon how to service and fire the guns. Now, This beach, if you look down this beach here in the 1770s, you wouldn't see trees and cottages. What you'd see is sand dunes. Every stick of firewood within about 8 miles of the fort had been cut down, and of course sand blew in. And that would provide a pretty good shelter for an enemy attacking this fort. And believe it or not, the fear in 1780 was that the attack would probably come from the west. The reason it would come from the west is because the Spanish held St. Louis, Missouri, and they were seen as a threat. They were allied to the French, who had pledged support for the 13 colonies. So the fear was that the Spanish might come up the Mississippi to the Illinois River, and there where Chicago is today, build a gunboat and blast this place off the map. So the Coal-Horn mortar, they would have felt a little more secure having that, because if troops were sheltering out here in the sand dunes, that is one weapon that you can fire up and over a sand dune, have it explode above the heads of your enemy on its way down. You fire into the sand dune all day with that solid iron shot, and it wouldn't do any harm at all. But we're ready to fire this for you. I will warn you, if we've packed it in there good, it should be loud. I'll also warn you that some days, if we've had a little rainstorm and the barrel's a little wet, that's what black powder that's its worst enemy, is moisture, and we might get a poof, but I think we're going to get a good boom today. So, you want to plug your ears? There are only 2 more commands, and they are...
I can't.
Hey, ready? Fire! Oh, and we pooped.
Oh, that wasn't that bad.
You've got a nice smoke ring above your head.
Oh, wow. That was cool.
That's cool, right?
Now, the next presentation for our morning, I'll be giving a tour out on the parade grounds at 11 o'clock. That's called Mischief and Mayhem at Michilimackinac, and it's about the year